Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
And I'm Chad.
And you're joining us today for our recap and discussion of Gardens of the Moon, Volume 1 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. Today we're covering books 5, 6, and 7 of Gardens of the Moon, the Gadrobi Hills, the City of Blue Fire, and the Fete, respectively. What a strange and satisfying and absolutely ridiculous ending this book has, Chad. Wow, we have dragons, ancient mummy things, ravens, floating cities, demons. We had characters dying everywhere. We had assassination attempts and duels. This is how you end a fantasy book, y'all. Even if I didn't quite understand everything that happened.
You know, this is my second read, and as we were talking about before this podcast, I have a lot more context because I've read a lot more of the story to put it into, so my comprehension maybe will be a little bit higher. I don't know. But even with that, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't also understand. But man, I gotta say, my first time reading this book, and I mentioned this on a previous episode, that the first time I read this series, I was like, I'm really excited to read this a second time. Like, I know it's going to be better. I was so right. Like, it is so much better the second time through. My comprehension, like, I feel pretty good. Like, ask me questions. I feel like I got this. And I know the first question I'm going to be like,
I know.
Who is that
I was
character?
just going to say, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to be like, can we pause and go research
Can we
this?
pause?
'Cause
Like,
I have
yeah.
no idea. I feel you, though. I mean, this is my third time going through this. Granted, I don't have as much series context as you do. I've only read the first two books and a little bit of the third one. So there are things like the Azath house at the end of this book where,
Yeah.
now that I know about like the dead house in Malaz City, I can piece together a tiny bit of things, but like also maybe the Azath house will get explained in book 9 or something, and that's just something that we're going to have to
talk about
sit
it a little
with
bit.
not understanding. But yeah, I would like to talk about that just a little bit. Actually, why don't we just jump right into the recap, because it's a very long recap, and we should get it out of the way and get to talking about this magnificent book that is apparently, according to lots of ranking lists that I looked at on the internet, most people say this is the worst book in this series. So,
I mean, I would have said that prior to this read through, but I don't know now. I really enjoyed my read through, and that ending, you nailed it when you said this is the way to end a fantasy book. Man, dragons and high mages fighting gods.
all right, let's do the recap.
Let's do it.
As Tool and Adjunct Lorne approach the Jagut Barrow, Tool explains the plan to release the tyrant, giving Anomander Rake no choice but to intervene and attempt to enslave the tyrant with his sword, Dragnapur. After finding the barrow marker, Tool explains they will open the tyrant's barrow the following day. Lorne contemplates the Jagut tyrant, thinking it similar to humans in its capacity for enslavement and its conquesting nature. Kruppa, Crocus, Cole, and Murillo head toward the Gadrobi Hills. The gang all ride mules, except for Cole, who is sporting armor and is the only one riding a horse. Kruppa tells Crocus they are working for Baruch, claiming their aim is to discover what has so many crows circling above the area. Sari follows behind, unseen for now. Perrin and Tok are following the trail of Hairlock, who is leaving dead ravens in his wake. Eventually, Hairlock attacks. He kills their horses and throws Tok into an unknown warren. Quickben, who was watching from afar with his magic, passes on the whereabouts of the puppet to Shadowthrone, who sends the hounds. They rip the puppet apart. Lorne comes across Kruppa and his group, and not thinking clearly, attacks them unprovoked. Kruppa tries to open his warren, but can't due to Lorne's sword. Murillo lands an attack, but is knocked out by the flat of Lorne's blade. The fight leaves Cole wounded and incapacitated, and Kruppa and Murillo out cold. Lorne realizes none of this was necessary, as they couldn't possibly know who she is, and they have not seen Tool. She instructs Crocus to tend to the wounded and make their way back to Darujistan. Meanwhile, Sari is closing in on them and sees Crocus is the last one still on his feet as Lorne leaves. Having finished with the puppet, the hounds turn on Perrin, who eggs them on for a fight. Before any fighting starts, however, Anomander Rake appears and kills two hounds, Doan and Ganrod, with his sword Dragnapur, saying he will not tolerate Shadowthrone's interference with his conflict with the Malazan Empire. Shadowthrone says he is not involved, and at Rake's request, recalls Cotillion, which frees Sari from Cotillion's influence. Shadowthrone and the hounds depart, and Rake informs Perrin he is no longer Opon's tool, then mentions Caladan Brood could heal him. Perrin shrugs this off, and when Rake notices Perrin's sword Chance, he mentions that the sword is still Opon's, and advises him to hold on to it until his luck turns. After that, he should break it or give it to his worst enemy. Rake finally leaves with Crone after she appears. Perrin is shaken by this encounter and the loss of Tok. He touches the blood of one of the dead hounds and is transported into the Warren of Dragnapur, where he encounters a huge wagon pulled by those slain with the sword. He forces the Opon brother to help him free the hounds slain by Rake, then finds himself back in the real world with the bodies of the hounds now gone. Sari, now thoroughly confused, stumbles across Crocus and the others. Cole recognizes that she has been possessed and tells Crocus to take her to his uncle Mammoth immediately. Lorne and Toole enter the barrow and, despite lots and lots of misgivings, decide to proceed with releasing the tyrant. This whole situation has bad vibes. On their way back to Darujistan, Sari adopts a new name, Apsalar. Kruppa and Murillo are following them to guard Crocus and bring news of the Malazan presence to Baruch. They've left Cole behind for the sake of speed. Kruppa also reveals he knows about Murillo and Rallick's plan to restore Cole's noble status. Still in the Gadrobi Hills, Perrin thinks on his intentions with the bridge burners, aiming to save their lives and to hell with the Malazan Empire. He encounters a band of Rivi, amongst them a young girl who has the bearing of Tattersail. The Rivi depart, headed for Kaladin Brood's front, before Perrin can investigate further. As Perrin wanders the hills, he comes across the injured Cole, and the two men strike up a friendship, sharing a drink and discussing their past nobility and the hardships and lessons that came with it. Rallick meets an agent of the Eel, Circlebreaker, who warns him that Ocelot has attempted a contract on Cole's life on behalf of Turban Or. Rake and Baruch discuss Rake's plans for Darujistan, the Jagu Tyrant, and Rake's motivations to return a, quote, zest of life to the Tiste Andi. Rake mentions that the Tiste Andi, inhabiting Moon's spawn, are the last of their race, and that they are depressed people. Later, Baruch leads him to the sleeping Mammoth, who had previously opened his Driss Warren and traveled directly into the barrow. Rake points out that the scholar might have got too close to his research and might become possessed by the tyrant. Crocus and Apsalar arrive at Mammoth's study to find him missing. Mies arrives after a signal from Circlebreaker and warns Crocus that he is wanted for killing a guard and advises that he and Apsalar remain hidden at Mammoth's house. Crocus is hurt, as he believes Chalice Dearl betrayed him. Unbeknownst to all of them, Surratt, a Tiste Ande assassin, is watching the house to kill Crocus when he leaves and eliminate Opon's influence on the city. Kruppa and Murillo arrive at the Phoenix Inn. Murillo leaves soon after and is accosted by Circlebreaker, who passes on a message concerning Turban Or. Rallick, meanwhile, is out hunting Ocelot. Whiskey Jack tells Kalam to make a final attempt at contacting the Assassin's Guild. Quick Ben cannot trace Sari. Fiddler gives Whiskey Jack a piece of his mind, saying that in denying the humanity of all your friends, you reduce the humanity in yourself. Perrin arrives at the city gate with Cole, whose wound has gotten much worse. Cole has mentioned he wants to be brought to the Phoenix Inn, and with nowhere else to go, Perrin agrees. A guard recognizes Cole and organizes a wagon to convey the injured man to the Phoenix Inn, just as Perrin sees something flash in Krull's belfry up above. Rallick, with the help of some Otatarol powder he acquired from Baruch, thwarts Ocelot's attempt to assassinate Cole and kills the clan leader, though he is wounded in the process. Surratt regains consciousness and realizes she has been knocked out by someone as she was about to make a move on the coin bearer. She vows revenge and leaves by Warren. Crocus and Apsalar have moved to the attic of the Phoenix Inn in the meantime. As the surgeon attends to Cole's wound, Perrin drinks at a table in the Phoenix Inn and considers breaking his sword. Callum arrives and Perrin orders him to fetch Mallet, the squad's healer, immediately. Callum returns with Whiskey Jack and Mallet, who is able to save Cole. Perrin and Whiskey Jack confer about Lawrence Talan Amas' companion and the plan to kill all the bridge burners. The sergeant uses a device from the Emperor's days to contact Dujek. They exchange updates on the current situation in Pale, Darujistan, and Ganabakis as a whole. Dujek informs them of a number of things. Lorne has opened the Jagu Tyrant Barrow. Lysine plans on sending Dujek's army to quell the rebellion brewing in 7 cities, and that he is about to defy orders of the Empress and intends to take on a new enemy called the Panian Seer. Perrin agrees to stay with the squad, but asks for Whiskey Jack to remain in charge. Inside the barrow, Lorne and Toole search for the Jagu Tyrant's Finest, a self-contained vessel of power that serves as a warren of Omtos Felak. Lorne's plan is to dampen the Finest's aura and head for Darujistan. The tyrant will wake, notice it is gone, and chase after it. Lorne finds the Finest, an acorn of all things, and they return to the surface. Crocus is sick of hiding and resolves to find Chalice and speak with her. He and Apsalar escape onto the rooftops. Surratt attempts to follow, but is pushed back by an invisible hand which sends her tumbling off her perch. Rallic reaches Murillo's room. They discuss a potential duel with Turban Orr at the Fete. The plan is to eliminate Turban Orr so Cole's status can be restored. Rallic's wound turns out to have been healed to the point of looking like a week-old scar, but he is weak from the loss of blood. Murillo has suspicions regarding the identity of the eel and leaves to find him. Baruch also wants to meet the eel, and Kruppa agrees to arrange it. Perrin deduces that Whiskey Jack's plan with the Moranth munitions is to sow chaos in the city. Many factors are coming together to make the city vulnerable enough for Dujek to insert himself as a hero, ready to defend Darujistan from the Malazan Empire. Whiskey Jack seems much more concerned with the Panian Seer in the south than anything happening currently. Lauren and Toole part ways as she heads for Darujistan, whilst Toole chooses to remain behind for 10 days to observe the tyrant as he emerges. Crocus and Apsalar reach Kurul's Belfry, where they find the body of Ocelot. Observing moons spawn, Crocus briefly sees 5 huge winged shapes leaving it. Apsalar points to the oceans on the moon and briefly recounts the hopeful story of Growlin, who will take his faithful away to a place of peace.
Darujistan's streets are filled with revelers, as the city's occupants and its infuls of tourists begin celebrating the yearly Gadrobi's Eve, which marks the passing of the last year, the Year of 5 Tusks, and the beginning and subsequent naming of the next year, deemed Moon's Tears by the ancient stone disc in Darujistan's Majesty Hall. Named each year via a series of complicated and mysterious cogs and mechanisms. The wheel was gifted to the city by none other than the legendary Icarium, a traveling Jagut who kept a trail as his companion. Its exact methods have been lost to time, but it still functions and is resolute in its task to assign a new name to each year. It also marks a high society favorite event, Lady Simtal's esteemed Fete, a party of epic proportions taking place in her estate within the city. The tradition is for everyone to go in costume, which makes the lives of one Malazan bridge burner contingent much easier, as well as aiding a love-struck young thief who plans on sneaking in the forested side of the estate to visit his crush, love on his mind and a god's coin in his pocket. Everyone who is anyone, and even some who are not, will be in attendance, and the city's elites buzz in anticipation of the event. We begin this fateful night following Murillo, who meets with Krupp on the way to the Phoenix Inn. Krupp has acquired masks for himself, Rallic Nom, and Murillo, bloviating about everything and nothing as is his way, as they make their way to the inn on the city streets. Murillo confronts Krupp, accusing Krupp of being the Eel, a mysterious entity accused of manipulating city officials and is thought to be at the center of a large web of plots and plays for power experienced recently throughout the city. But the slippery Krupp uses magic, and Murillo takes his mask and leaves Krupp, thoughts of the eel having been magically siphoned from his mind. Head alchemist Baruch, a power player within the city, and one that is possibly on the path to ascension itself, visits with Anomander Rake, who tells Baruch of his intention to attend Lady Simtal's celebration. Baruch watches his eyes shift from dun green to gray as Rake discusses the city's most powerful that will be in attendance. They discuss Mammoth's nephew, Crocus, and both Baruch and Rake identify him as the coin-bearer. Anomander Rake confirms Mammoth, too, will be at the Fete. The mysterious Circle Breaker, another unknown figure pulling strings at the center of his own web of the city's most powerful, makes arrangements to work as a guard at Lady Simtal's Fete. Like a magnet pulling in the powerful, Adjunct Lorne arrives in Darujistan seeking an audience with Whiskey Jack and her bridge burner infiltrators. Lorne meets up with the bridge burners and gets a report of their efforts to contact the city's assassin guilds and their fallback plan consisting of Moranth munitions, a few sappers, and chaos. Lorne takes over command, immediately taken back at how little she must do, and sees the extent of the highly capable Whiskey Jack's abilities as a leader and strategist. Another attack by Serat on the coin-bearer is foiled, this time by someone whose voice she recognizes. She is told at knife point that he is in the protected care of the prince. While the city's pot comes to a low boil, the Jagut tyrant Raced awakens from his many-century-long sleep and begins gathering his power about him. The thought of continent-wide conquest sweet in his mind. He leaves his barrow and is immediately set upon by Solana and 4 other dragons. Crone circles high above him, watching as Raced opens his Omtos Felak warren. His flesh splits around his body. They release their warrens against each other as Solana impales him with her talons, snapping his ribcage and breaking his body. Raist uses raw power to keep his physical form together as his fingers dig into Solana's skin and pump the magical power of his Omtos Felak Warren into her, shattering bones and boiling her blood. Solana releases Raist, who laughs with glee and sets off to find his finest, an item of great power that once found will make him unstoppable. Raist heads towards the city. Lorne plants an acorn in a garden and goes in search of the coin bearer. Her intention is to kill Crocus and take Opon's coin for herself. Crocus and Absalar sneak over Lady Simtel's estate wall and make themselves at home in her forest as the attendees for the Fete begin to arrive. Baruch and Rake arrive at the Fete with Rake dressed as a dragon, towering head and shoulders above the humans. Rake is introduced to Or and Simtal, but his name means nothing to them. Murillo and Rallick observe as Krupp meets Baruch and his guest. Councilman Orr realizes that one of the guards is the spy he has been hunting for, but before he can get to the man, Rallick provokes the councilman into declaring a duel. The duelists prepare, all the while Lady Simtal's partygoers wonder where is their host. We learn she has snuck away with Murillo, who has seduced the Lady Simtal. The dueling parties move out to the terrace, and Rake volunteers to be Rallick's second. The bridge burners recognize him, and Whiskey Jack orders the sappers to stay sharp and ready in case they need a diversion. Crocus is looking for his crushed chalice, and Krupp delivers Circlebreaker a message from the eel, with news promising retirement and an estate purchased in Circlebreaker's name in a nearby city. The message saying, "The circle has been closed. His work is done." The duel is over quickly as the arrogant Orr starts the duel with a blindingly quick thrust. Rallick flows around the attack. Two daggers seem to appear in his hands. One easily parries Orr's rapier while the other drinks deep of Orr's neck. The second, not long behind, sinks into Orr's chest, kissing his heart. In a half-second, twice killing Orr. Orr is dead before he is aware of the attack. Rallick sheathing his blades while Orr gapes, slowly realizing he is dead, surprise etched on his face as he lays down forever in a rapidly growing pool of his own blood. Rake is introduced to the Cabal witch Darudin and mentions a threat close by, but won't give details. Rallick informs Simtal that Orr is dead and that Cole will be reinstated. Knowing her only connection to the city's power to be the now slain Councilman Orr, Murillo knows her days of influence to be over in the city and takes leave of her bedchambers. Like a gentleman, he leaves his dagger on her bed and knows he will be the last to have seen her alive. Crocus, brimming with the uncertain certainty of young love, boldly kidnaps Chalice, dragging her into the forest with a hand muffling her cries. Raist is swept away from his battle with Solana into Krupp's dream, where he is attacked by Tool, who severely damages the tyrant. Karul appears, offering Raist the choice of being killed by Tool or to accompany Karul to the gates of chaos. Karul telling him that times have changed, and now mortals rule the gods, though they know it not. Enraged, Raist chooses neither, escaping by transferring to another body elsewhere. Perrin and Kalam come across Sari, who is standing in front of an unnatural wooden block in a glen in Simtal's garden. She rebuffs an attack from an opportunistic Kalam, but does not counter with deadly force, as would be her typical reaction to such an affront. Her odd comments cause Perrin to get Mallet, who confirms that Sari is no longer possessed, but that there is still a presence in her which has been protecting the girl from her memories, having done horrible deeds and spilt gallons of blood while possessed by the Ascendant. Mallet decides to help that entity, trusting it does not mean to harm Sari, now Absalar. Vorkin asks Rallick to come to the garden with her, whilst Crocus finds out that Chalice did not betray him, but sadly she tells him that they cannot be, their stations in society being so far apart, and it wouldn't matter anyway as her fancies belong to another. They part acrimoniously. Crocus then observes from a hiding place as Vorkin and Rallick speak to Kalam. The three are joined by two others and Absalar. He hears guild leader Vorkin accept a contract from the Malazans to kill the members of the Torud Cabal, and the massive sum she and her cohorts shall receive from Empress Lysine for helping take Darujistan without the Malazan Empire having to lay siege to the city. All then depart the forest of Lady Simtal's estate apart from Rallick, as his presence dampens the activities of the alien block, a rapidly growing wooden house which seems to be growing at an alarming rate in the forest. Rallick asks Crocus to warn Baruch about the threat facing the Cabal. The Jagut tyrant has taken possession of Mammoth, and is attacking the guests at the Fete, his powerful magical attacks turning partygoers into dust as the possessed mammoth merrily lays waste to those around him. He is opposed by Quick Ben and the witch Darudin. When one of Rast's energy bolts hits Perrin's sword, the captain finds himself in another realm, where Tool is battling the finesse of the Jagut. Once Tool is exhausted, Perrin takes over. Their efforts give the Azath house time to mature and grow powerful enough to be able to take in the finesse and hold it forever. Back at the estate, Quick Ben unveils 7 warrens to combat the tyrant. Just as he and Darudin's sorceries seem exhausted, Hedge appears and makes the power of a Malazan sapper be known to all as he throws a Moranth munition, which leaves a smoldering crater where the Jagut stood seconds before. But before their breaths of relief fully escape them, a commotion within the crater seizes their focus. They observe in horror. Rast is still alive and well, though Mammoth's body is a wreck. The Jagut tyrant is still alive and is using his awe-inspiring power to piece the body back together. Perrin, still in Krupp's dreamscape, manages to hold off the finessed creature, desperately biting its face. Tool ends the fight, saying the Azath house, the structure in the garden, is now strong enough to hold the finessed. Their fight ends. Perrin reappears in the estate terrace and collapses on the ground, watching as the Azath house snakes roots over to the rapidly reforming body of the Jagut and seizes him. The Jagut is pulled deep into the roots, imprisoned once again. Soon after, the sappers head off to blow up the intersections. Moments later, Kalam realizes that this will ignite the gas supply underneath the city, incinerating all and everyone. He races off to stop Fiddler and Hedge. Perrin is briefly pulled into the Shadow Realm, where he is attacked by a hound, but only wounded before the hound releases him. He speaks with Cotillion and agrees to give his sword to the rope, which breaks Perrin's connection to Opon. Returned to the Fete, Perrin leaves to go after Lorn. On his way to Baruch, Crocus notices that Moonspawn now hangs over the city. He is observed by Lorn, who releases a Ghislaine demon lord to go after him, while she follows close behind. Baruch and Darudin feel the release of the demon, and moments later the death of their 2 fellow Cabal members. Faced with the Demon Lord, Hedge and Fiddler have abandoned their plan and with Kalam run back to Simtal's. Lorn's attack on Crocus is thwarted by members of the Crimson Guard. One of them enlightens Crocus about his role as coin-bearer. Lorn escapes, severely wounded, and is quickly intercepted by Mies and Arilta, agents of the Eel. After a brief 2-on-1 fight, Lorn sinks to the ground, surprise written on her face. Her lifeblood flows free from her body, the pain from a fatal wound steadily making itself known to her as darkness begins to close about. Perrin finds her and takes her sword as his own. The twins, Opon, appear, and he refuses to hand over the Ototaral sword to them. Crocus, in the meantime, witnesses the battle between Rake and the Ghislaine demon. Rake kills the demon, then tells Crocus to go and assist Baruch, who is in danger. Baruch and Darudin are attacked by Vorkin, but survive due to the interference of Sarat, who is killed by Vorkin, and Crocus, who knocks Vorkin out by throwing bricks at her. Vorkin then disappears. Cole overhears the bridge burners conferring with Dujek, who tells them that the host is now officially outlawed. He offers to help them get out of the city. Rallick prevents the injured Vorkin from pursuing the Tistiandi by entering the new Azath house with her. The Tisti decide to abandon their quest. Krupp, Murillo, and Crocus are reunited. Mallet is worrying about Whiskey Jack's leg, and Quick Ben is thinking of a scheme that will make the sergeant howl when he eventually hears of it. The bridge burners are leaving by Moranth to join Dujek's host, apart from Fiddler and Kalam, who, with Crocus, are taking the former Sari, now called Apsalar, back to her homeland of Itko Khan. Circlebreaker, a fellow passenger on their boat on his way to retirement, observes as Crocus officially ends Volume 1 of Malazan Book of the Fallen, Gardens of the Moon, with a small splash, as he wisely throws Opon's coin into the water.
Okay, so one thing that I kept telling myself while I was reading this book, I've read it a couple times, but I think it's important for me to tell myself this, and it's important for me to tell the audience this, people that are listening to this for the first time, people that are reading this for the first time. We don't know most things. There are so many things that I looked them up when I was curious about something, and I look it up, and every answer was just read and find out, read and find out, read and find out. This is a series where your questions don't have answers yet. That happens with some fantasy series all the time, but I think that with Gardens of the Moon specifically, being the first volume in Malazan Book of the Fallen, there's just so much There really just isn't an answer yet, and if you found out the answer, it would spoil the fun for you. So I just want to like really level with everybody, and just like really make sure to pat everybody here that's like finished this book, pat you on the back, and just say you got through this. There were so many things that totally didn't, like the Azath house, the finesse kind of makes sense, but like there's so many things that I looked up, like why is Perrin so powerful with the gods? Like what's up with that? Like how was he able to influence Opan? Those kinds of things I would look it up, and the question would be on the internet, but then every answer is just like, don't worry about it right now. We'll figure it out later.
There's really a suspension of like understanding that you're kind of required to take with you throughout the reading of these books, especially this book, and especially for the first time. Like I remember my first time reading it, I kept going back because I really like to have a, fairly high level of comprehension of like knowing what I'm reading. And so I would keep like going back, like, did I miss something? What are these warrens? Like all the stuff that I was confused about. And now reading it for the second time, my level of comprehension is so much higher, and I laugh at my former self for being like kind of like wallowing in like despair, like, man, maybe I'm just dumb reading these books. If you are having a similar experience reading this, dear listener, it is not a you thing. It is a these book things. I assure you, you know exactly how much you need to know to enjoy the rest of this book. Just go with it. Some things will never be explained, but that's okay. You won't remember those things anyway. So, and most of it will be explained. We're operating in a land here that has thousands of hours of creative effort put into like every nook and corner of that is filled with historical pottery. There's just so much to be experienced within the land that Stephen Erikson and company have laid out here that it's real easy to get lost in everything. So don't feel lost. Just know that it'll all come in due time.
All right, so now that we've successfully patted everybody on the back, I want to start with something that I loved, my favorite part of the entire book. In chapter 18, I think the first scene in chapter 18, we're pretty far into the book now. It's been a journey, and it's Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners sitting in this room, and Fiddlar gives Whiskey Jack a piece of his mind. And I loved it so much because Fiddlar, that's a band. Fiddlar is really awesome. You should listen to them. Fiddlar doesn't talk very much in this book, and there's even a moment where Whiskey Jack kind of looks at Fiddler and is like, "Man, this guy's kind of dumb." Like, there's just like Fiddler is presented to us as this sort of kind of dopey, like explosives head.
He doesn't say
like
dumb. He just says bad at being a soldier.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't say dumb, but like we kind of get the impression that Fiddler is like this pyromaniac. You know what I mean?
He's
like,
found his calling,
right? Which is awesome. I mean, I love that for him. I love that for him. I love him and Hedge. But Fiddler says this, and I just want to kind of like read through this real quick. So they're kind of talking about sorry. They're talking about like killing people and ordering people to die and stuff like that. Kalam says, I'd hate to think that evil was real, that it existed with a face as plain as the next man's. I know, Whiskey Jack, you've got your reasons for wanting it that way. And then Quickben chimes in and he's like, yeah, it keeps you sane every time you order somebody to die. We all know about that, Sarge. They're kind of just talking about this, and then Whiskey Jack in his very kind of like growly way, it's just like, all right, whatever. Does anybody else have anything to say? Like while you're all like trying to make me feel better,
you're all hot and bothered. Let's get it out.
Fiddler says, it's like this, Sergeant. We've seen a lot of our friends die, right? And maybe we didn't have to give the orders, so maybe you think it's easier for us. But I don't think so. You see, to us, those people were living and breathing. They were friends. When they die, it hurts. But you go around telling yourself that the only way to keep from going mad is to take all of that away from them, so you don't have to think about it. So you don't have to feel anything when they die. But damn, when you take away everybody else's humanity, you take away your own. And that'll drive you mad sure as anything. It's that hurt we feel that makes us keep going, Sergeant. And maybe we're not getting anywhere, but at least we're not running away from anything. Oh my God. And
hit him with the wisdom stick. Wow.
So funny because there's like this silence, and then Hedge punches him in the arm and he's like, I'll be damned, you got a brain in there after all. But it's so cool because we were talking a little on I think the episode before this about the Bridge Burners' motivations.
Totally.
Like what's keeping them
what's
going?
Fueling them.
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought that was such a perfect thing for Fiddler to say, and it wasn't something Whiskey Jack was gonna say, which really, honestly, it endeared me to Whiskey Jack even more, though,
Of
Like it's
course.
so interesting how this dynamic between these people and
He's
these
like the
very good
boomer
friends.
dad who like won't show any emotion even when
Maybe,
people are
yeah.
being ripped apart around him, and they're like, "Hey man, we like know that you feel it, but don't try to snub yourself out because the pain that you feel is the thing that reminds you that you're alive and that you're human and that there's an opposite to that pain. You know, there's love and friendship on the other side, you know."
Right, and like and trying to take away the reality of that suffering to make yourself feel better about the orders that you're giving or the actions that you feel compelled to take is not, it's like it's almost taking away and objectifying and besmirching maybe like the death that and the suffering of those people. Like
100%. If you make it mean nothing, then what are we all doing out here?
and honestly, like the other reason I like it so much is because I feel like for Whiskey Jack in particular, things are seeming so bleak. They just lost so many friends. They just lost so many people. Now they're in this situation, and I feel like Fiddler saying that was kind of like in the way that I interpreted it. That scene was kind of like Fiddler reality checking Whiskey Jack a little bit and saying, "Hey, like you're not alone in this, and we're all in this together. You're among friends, like you're among your companions, you're among your family." And I think Whiskey Jack knew that, obviously, but he needed to be reminded.
100%. And he and even more, Fiddler was reminding him, it was kind of like showing him how to lead them, right? He was like, "Hey, one thing, don't do this because this removes the entire reason that we're out here in the first place." And also, don't he's instructing him on how to lead properly, and
Sure.
also kind of giving Whiskey Jack like, "Oh, right." A reminder as to the important things, you know?
I think that that scene for me like really solidifies how important this group of characters is going to be for this whole series, even
Yeah.
though we don't see them together in this way consistently throughout the series, obviously. But I think that having the bridge burners be kind of like the main spotlight characters, it seems like at least is that now me saying that obviously sure, but like also this series is so epic in scope that there are a lot of spotlight characters. But I think that the bridge burners, I think it's safe to say, starting out the entire series with Whiskey Jack, up on Mox Hold and everything, like Perrin and the bridge burners, I'm really excited to see how all of their relationships kind of pan out because there's a part where I believe it's Quick Ben when Quick Ben is like watching for Hairlock or whatever. Trots is there too, and, and by the way, naming your character Trots, Steven Erikson, you're just putting a mental image in my head every single time I read the name. So I mean, I thanks I guess. Damn man. But anyway, Quick Ben is thinking. He's just like sitting there thinking about Trots, and he's just like, man, I've been in so many scrapes with this guy, but like I hardly even know him. Like I don't really even know the person that saved my life like, quite a few times, and I've known for years. And it's interesting because I feel like Erikson is almost like aware that me, like as a reader, like I want to get to know these people almost as their relationships evolve with each other too, because they'd have to be flexible, like they'd have to be a certain dynamic relationship because they're this kind of, I mean, now are they like outlawed or something? Can I ask you about that actually?
Let's get to that later. Let's get to
Oh,
that
you
later
want to get
because
to that
I
later?
have
Okay,
some.
cool.
I want to have a conversation about
Sure.
that.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. I thought, yeah,
yeah. But
I thought
I really
maybe.
like the track that you're on right now. I want to finish it before we move on from it.
What I was saying though is that they are kind of like outlawed now. You know, like the bridge burners are not what they were before, but these
Right.
people are still here. They're still working towards something. So, I mean, if anything in this book was like handled, in my opinion, really, really well, it's the presentation of the bridge burners. Like, damn, like every time
Totally.
they're on the page, I just want to know more.
If you're leaving this book being like, "Man, I'm so confused," but I know that the bridge burners are this book's like Logan Nine Fingers, Dow, Toll,
Sure.
Grim,
Yeah.
Dogman, Three Trees, and Forley the Weakest, you are correct. I guess a speaks to Steven Erikson's skill that in like a pretty short amount of time we've developed an emotional connection not only to the characters, but we kind of experience the emotional connection that the characters experience with each other. And
Yeah.
like how you were saying, it's got to stay, it's a pretty unique thing, right? Because it's got to stay very plastic in its ability to like, we can't be mourning 100% of the time, which would
No.
happen because people are dying all the time around us or being transferred to other groups or something. So it's like just the nature of their life being so like fragile means that they have to kind of treat each other with like an indifference, but at the same time, the thing that they're going through is so like horrific that it brings out a certain like depth of camaraderie and like love between them that he just captures really well in like a very short amount of time. Before this episode, I was listening to a reviewer online, and he DNF'd it, and he did not have very many good things to say about it. And I won't get into what he was saying very much, but one of the things that he said that kind of struck me is, and I wanted your opinion on that relates here, is he said that this is very much a plot over character story, and that it was like only all about the plot was driving everything. And I couldn't disagree more, even though I get what he's saying. Like, there's not much time spent between each individual character, but the emotional pull and connection I feel, especially towards the bridge burners, coming off of like the last page of this book, was so much so that I, I can't think that it's a plot driven over character driven book. Like, the characters are the most important thing. I mean, that's like the whole point that Fiddler was making, is the characters are the most important parts of this book, and it would be totally pointless without those relationships.
So I disagree with that also, but I think I can see where someone is coming from if they were to say something like that. There's a lot of highs for a lot of these characters, like emotion wise, development wise, a certain thoroughness with their spectrum of emotion in like these short, like acute bursts almost. And I think that,
Okay.
but also there's that for some characters, it does that very well. So I do think that there is some very good character work done here, but I also say that the book is definitely kind of straining under the weight of this many POVs, and I think that
Well said.
like maybe that might have something, because I think that like Rallick Nam, while I think is a badass character, I don't really like know the guy. Murillo,
Right.
like I don't
For
like
Cole,
Kruppa or Cole. We
I
got.
feel pretty good about Kruppa, but
What I'm saying though is
Cole,
like Cole. I mean Cole actually.
I guess he just wasn't involved in the last part of the book, really.
It's weird though, because like what I said though about like kind of like these acute like bursts of like you're really opening up and seeing somebody. It's like when Perrin and Cole are talking in the Gadrobi Hills, and Cole opens up about like why he doesn't have a nobility status anymore, and like what happened with his wife and
Right.
everything. I was sitting there reading like, damn, that's like the worst. That's awful. Like, oh my gosh. And then I could really understand why he was as shaken up and drinking as much as he was, and you know what I mean. But then it's like, also though, why are Rallick Nam and Murillo this intense about getting him back to, you know what I mean, like why are they this good of friends? Like we didn't really like dig into that very much at all, I mean maybe
No, I
like
don't
a
really know
tiny
anything
bit.
about their
I
history.
mean Cole, as far as my read went, like I was surprised Cole went along to the Gadrobi Hills at all. Like it seemed a little lopsided. It seemed like he was just kind of like tossed in there a little bit. And I think that there's a few instances of that. I'm kind of segueing just a little bit away from that point, if that's okay, if you don't mind,
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
because I disagree with that sentiment. But I mean, it is very plot driven. But I think that there's some really amazing character work
Right.
here as
He
well.
also
But
didn't finish the
um,
book, so I'm not like taking his word for a thing. It just struck me as odd that he said that, and I wish he would have finished it.
another thing though that's kind of like related to the Cole thing, I think that some of Erikson's, and maybe it's just this book, because I remember Deadhouse Gates being just overall a much better book than this. Not saying this
Yes.
is a bad book, but it's just much better in my
You have
opinion.
to keep in
But
mind this was adapted from a screenplay too,
sure, I
right?
mean, I think Erikson in this book specifically, I think that he kind of stumbles when he's trying to kind of give us like these kind of like moments of like, haha, like, isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? It's like a really good example of this is the demon that Anomander Rake fights at the end of this book.
Sure.
Man, like, what a
From out of nowhere. You think he's gonna be fighting the Jagot Tyrant? No, no.
I thought that was a little clumsy. Like I thought that was a little bit like, because and the reason I'm saying the word clumsy is because I'm really not trying to rewrite this. I think that it would have been a lot better though if there was some foreshadowing for this demon. If there was some, then it wasn't enough for me to remember it. Like it wasn't enough for me to really latch on and wonder like what is Lauren about to unleash apart from this Jagu tyrant.
It's like
It's like
Tayscrin's God.
it's just this sort of weird thing for Anomander Rake to battle, and it was cool, but I thought it would have been cooler if it had been built up a little bit more. Like even the part where Lauren unleashes it, it's still just like, what the hell is this exactly? Like, you know what I mean? And it's just that would have been a really epic battle if I knew what the hell that thing was. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
big dragon Animander Rake fighting because I want stakes. Like I want to almost think Animander Rake can't beat something. Like build it up a little bit. Like because if Animander Rake was fighting the Jakku Tyrant, that was built up. That would have been really
Right.
badass. You know what I mean? But maybe there's some, with all my critiques, maybe there's some kind of reason. There's always like some kind of reason why we don't know. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree. Like, am I a glutton for like awesome action and demon king of the dragons, apparently Anomander Rake, like fighting off this demon lord thing? Like, it was pretty awesome. But at the same time, like, you're right, it came out of nowhere. The only like little hinty hint we had about the Ghislaine Lord was I think Taskrin mentioned that it was like the most powerful of its kind or something. And he was the
Not
one who
enough.
gave
Sorry. Even if it's
adjunct.
mentioned.
No, it's nothing, dude. It's nothing.
Like Evan,
And
if you look here on page 216, it clearly says this one time on this. No, it's not enough. Sorry, not for that
it seemed a
battle.
little
No.
overkill too, because she okay, correct. Actually, maybe you can help me on this. Did she when she released it, was it like go get Crocus, or was it trying to draw away Anomander Rake?
I don't remember.
I don't know either. The drawing away of Anomander Rake makes more sense to me because she could just kill Crocus, it seems like, pretty easily. Though I do remember Crocus running off and her like shattering the thing and being like, go, And then Crocus had that thing bearing down upon him, and Anomander Rake was like, da da da, I'm here. And you're right. It is kind of like a false aha, gotcha, because it would have been cooler if Rake would have fought the thing that we were all scared of that like could subjugate entire continents. We had all this backstory on. Instead, it was like, no, no, that thing's already dead at this point. We've already defeated that thing. We have this new threat that could just totally wipe out the entire um, city. Though I thought, there's elements of it that I really like though about him like clearing the city streets and stuff and just like holding Dragnapur out in front. Oh, can we go down the Dragnapur rabbit trail a little bit here?
I want to really quick.
Do we have a period
I
on
want
that
to
or no?
mention. Well, I want to talk about Lorne just a tiny bit
Let's do it.
because we were mentioning characters. We were talking about characters, and I think Lorne is a really good character. I like Lorne
Great
a lot,
character.
especially that moment where she kind of like Tool is kind of like, here's everything about the Jagu Tyrant and all the backstory and stuff, and then Lorne kind of has a moment to herself, and she's just like, huh. Are we the baddies?
Yeah, yeah. She has
she
some
had like a
real weird
yeah.
self introspection along the course of her travels for sure.
I wanted to ask you though. I mean, like, what do you think is up with like her struggling with her? She seems to be having a bit of like an existential and identity crisis happening through this book. What do you think it
Yeah.
is? Like, do you think it? And I don't think it's really. I don't know if we can really extrapolate too much, but I was just curious about where your head's at with all that because, like, do you think that it's just that she isn't like hard enough? You know what I mean? Or do you think
No.
that the position is like like almost an impossible position to give somebody?
It's more on the impossible mission. This is what I don't know what Lauren's position was prior to Empress Lysine. I think she was maybe on the claw, perhaps. I don't know. I think she had some position of power though. And so, as with many structures, it's like if you joined the military being like, I'm gonna fight for freedom, and then learned that we were being controlled by like lizard people or something, and you're like, man, well now I'm like fighting for freedom, but I'm being controlled by these lizard people. And I think a similar sort of thing happened to her where she was like, I'm all about Malazan Empire. Like, obviously see the effect that the like a unified land has behind our, chaotic borders that we're always trying to expand. There is peace amongst the land. She
A
sees that
brand of peace.
a brand of peace. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's also a brand of like servitude as
Yeah.
well, right?
Peace is a funny word,
Peace is a
like
funny word, yeah, and you can sacrifice some darn important things in order to attain it, which I'm sure the Malazan people
to
have. But
justify those horrible things you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And
Yeah.
what's the quote where it's like, if you do, then you'll lose both and deserve neither, sort of thing. Anyway, so I think Lauren's internal battle is this. She joined up the Malazan originally wanting to fight for like good, rose in the ranks due to her being super skilled. Maybe got a little bit too deep with Lysine's seemingly, we haven't spent much time with Lysine at all, but from what I figure, from what I can see, she has like no morality. She's like partnering with demon lords in order to attain her power.
I
She's
want to
just like
find out
all
more
about
about
the power.
Lysine.
Me
Like,
too. I would love some POV because that's what I thought about Lauren prior to getting inside of her head.
yeah.
And so I think that she's kind of having an internal struggle, knowing that the Malazan Force is now bringing about more suffering and death to the world than perhaps the peace the form of peace that it leaves in its wake. And she's really struggling being like this close to Lacine, especially when she had something very, intimate to her and important to her happen, where she confronted Tattersail, who's like, she's like, you killed my parents, and then was immediately told, like, you're a hand of the Empress now. The Malazan Empire's needs basically supplant your own. And that's a pretty hard pill to swallow.
Not to mention Tattersail's answer, the I was just following orders answer that she had. It's funny because like Lorne, that's all she's really got too. You know what I mean?
Right. So, like,
Like it,
the orders of her empire killed her parents?
well, and also it's interesting too because there's multiple parts of this book where Lorne is chiefly concerned with what Lacine would think. Like
Yes.
it's that's a whole other thing too, where it's like she is still kind of like working for the Empress's affection and not necessarily. I feel like you'd have to be so cold blooded that the Empress's affection wouldn't even factor into like what you're doing necessarily. It would have to be like
Was it
just this kind
affection or
of.
fear, though?
It was just her opinion of her. It seemed
Okay.
like it didn't seem like it was necessarily coming from a place of fear. It was more like a I've been promoted to this prestigious role and I want to keep it kind of thing, you know.
Oh, it's more important. It's bigger than
Well,
me.
and she
Yeah.
doesn't not necessarily keep the role, but keep the prestige. It was very interesting watching her observing so much, and then I was really surprised. Not this time because I knew what was going on. I was surprised in my first read through to see that she died. I was
So
like, okay, okay. Like, what do
I
you think
know.
about that?
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised this time. I had forgotten that she had died. Uh, though I think it's kind of her kind of like almost frivolous throwing away by old Steven Erikson, I think is kind of like it's a real good period to the sentence and the lesson that is Lorne, that like, man, sometimes we get involved with things, sometimes we find out more than we really want to, we get in too deep, things get bigger than our own selves, and we have to sacrifice a part of ourselves, and we struggle with this and this moral quandary that we have on the actions that we're having. But at the end of the day, war just kills
Gonna kill
indifferently.
people.
It's
Yeah,
just gonna slaughter people. And so she's kind of like the lesson of like, you know what? Sometimes we struggle internally, but and sometimes it really doesn't matter because you're just like caught up in this maelstrom of like, like I guess you could summarize it like shit happens
well, and
sometimes,
remember
and like
the
it
way that
truly
she
does.
dies. The way she dies is, she's killed
Pretty
by like
lame.
just like these two random people that she like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's even thinking it. She's just like, oh, why is it these people that are
So
killing me?
she's
Like this is.
surprised the
Yeah,
entire
she's just
time
like,
because we
damn
all
it,
have
this
like
sucks.
ourselves written as the hero of the story, and
Yeah,
of course we're going to
totally.
survive to the end. We're not going to be, random
Killed
side
by two
character number
random
three.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was like, I am that, and then you kind of see her questioning every decision very rapidly that led her to then, and then us having that delightful little nugget takeaway of like, man, sometimes sometimes it just don't matter. War kills.
I want to talk about another character real quick. Just kind of like touch on him real quick because I don't think he's like super deep, but there's like three things I want to talk about with Ralik Nam. Two things are just kind of cool. His fight with Ocelot in the Belfry was really cool. I liked that a
Super
lot.
cool.
It was quick. It was interesting, and then the duel was awesome. I really liked the duel
Oh,
between him and Turbanor.
it might be my favorite part of the book.
It's just excellent. I think Ralik Nam was kind of like this kind of nothing character for a little bit for me, and then every time he was on the page towards the end of the book, I was like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" Like, this is a very cool character. The reason I really brought up Ralik Nam was I have a question, and it's why did Ralik and Vorken go into the Azeth house at the end of this book? What is that? One of those read and find out kind of things? Because like that seemed like very. Did they know what it was? Like, did I don't.
Okay, so
You don't have to
both are
answer.
I don't think I'll be able to, but I can maybe give you a little bit more of like juice around it. So I think both of them are pretty wounded, or at least I know that Vorkin is pretty gravely wounded. Because she just failed an attack on Baruch and Darudin, right? Got hit with a brick from old Crocus. And there's the Tisti Andi, who have her blood on like their radar for sure, pursuing her.
So they were just
And
escaping them? Is that
yeah, so
basically
Ralik
okay?
Nam and Vorkin are like, we need to get the hell out of here. We stepped on Animander Rake's toes and Baruch's toe.
Sure.
We have no
Okay.
safe place,
Okay.
so we're gonna go in there. Also, she was really wounded, and I think the Azeth house has something to do with healing, perhaps. Like they're usually places of like healing, maybe. If I could be just making that up, I don't know. But
Aren't they
and
places without? I don't want to spoil anything, but aren't the Azeth houses like not everybody can just like waltz into those,
totally
right?
right. So
That's
the
like a
fact that they
thing.
opened to them, it was like,
Yeah,
oh, we're being presented with an opportunity here that is
I
like
see.
godless. Like no god controls that because it's like the house makes its own thing because the house is
That's
connected to all Warrens, right? Like you can find
no,
a
don't spoil too much. Oh my
okay,
God, I'm
okay,
so
okay.
sorry. I also wanted to like break a little fourth wall here and say everybody, um, the Azeth house, we just don't know what that is right now. Like it's just a thing we don't know what the hell it is. Like
And nor
it's
do I know if we will ever know.
it's expanded on a tiny little bit in Deadhouse Gates at the very end of the book, I believe. I only read
Because I mean,
Deadhouse Gates once, but there's
I
like
know the lore of them. I just don't really know
sure.
like
Let's just put a pin in that right now because like it sounds like they were trying to run away from the Tistandi. That's cool. We don't know what the hell an Azeth house is.
they were presented with an opportunity that was definitely better than their current state and more safe. Who knows where they'll come out? And they took it.
I don't know if I can even really speculate at all on what an Azeth house is, apart from it's like some sort of repository of a lot of power. That's like the only thing I've got right now. Speaking of magic, though, one thing that I had a lot of trouble with, and I'm not going to expect you to really explain this away because maybe we need to find out later, but just a notice that I had the Jagu tyrant being in the Omtos Felak thing. There's like the Tellan Warren next to it, so like the like Tellan MS can like access it because they're like
Sure,
related elder magic and like
sure.
I was just like, all right, they know more than I do about this, so I'm just gonna let. But then also the reason I brought that up, now I'm gonna shift over to Mammoth.
If you think about the Warrens like a charcuterie plat, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh my god, please don't, please stop, man, don't do this to me, man.
Though
Uh,
I do have some insight if you wanted to know, but I think it's
let's save it for a little
spoilery. I
later.
think it's
But
spoilery, so you shouldn't. We shouldn't get into it.
I want to talk about Mehmet because there's a moment where he apparently delved too greedily and too deep. He sent it a little too hard. He took too big of a hit of his own magic, which is like earth magic, which like he was apparently able to like tap into like the Omtos Falak Warren or something and like be in the barrow when like okay, so I don't know if you're listening right now, you're like, that sounds confusing. Yeah, it really is.
Yep.
That's my best understanding of it. So my question though is like Mamet seems like a fairly smart person. Why would he do that? Like if there was even the chance, if a Jagu tyrant is this legendary and this scary, why even attempt to get anywhere near that Warren with your own Warren? Like it just seemed really weird. Like it seemed really silly to do that. And then obviously at the end of that chapter, Animander Rake is just like, pretty sure that guy's gonna get possessed, you know? And then obviously he does. So it's like I don't know. That just seemed weird. Can you explain any of that, or is that just like a thing that happened?
I mean, I think his only really, he was assured by Tool that he would be able to like enter his deep priestly meditative state and remain unnoticed by the Jagut tyrant. And I think it's because the game that they're playing, the stakes are so incredibly high that like, yes, he could if he gets noticed, he will be like subjugated and killed like horrifically immediately.
Or
Uh,
possessed?
or possessed, but it's like kind of worth it because the stakes are so high. If that thing, he needs to know what that thing's doing. If that thing like decides to, I don't know, be
Sure,
more
I
clever than just
guess.
go out and
Yeah.
start causing havoc, he needs to know about it so he can do something, or else it's going to take over the entire continent and subjugate the world. That's the only thing I can think of.
I think that's a pretty satisfactory answer for now.
And he was a high priest too, so like lots of arrogance.
I have another notice here with regard to the Jagu Tyrant. And tell me if this sounds a little off base, because I'm just getting spacey with it now. Like
Let's
this
do it.
book just made me think a lot. I think that what Erikson is trying to do, among many other things, with the Jagu Tyrant, and with Lorne's thoughts and ruminations about the Jagu Tyrant, in my mind, what I think Erikson is trying to do is like this ultimate showing over telling kind of situation.
Right, like
Where
why we have the Jaguar tyrant at all in this story?
this is
Is
what
that
I'm
what you're
saying.
trying?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
perfect. Yeah, no, I'm
there's
interested
many
in that.
reasons for having the Jagu Tyrant, but I think one of the reasons is to show us that what's going on right now in this series is but a scene in the long, long film that is the history of these continents in this world. And so the Jagu tyrant is presented as like this thing that was so horrible.
Just so powerful because it was taken out by its members of its own race.
Right, exactly. It was the most powerful thing back there. It was like the Dark Lord of that
Totally.
time. You know what I mean? And obviously it would be if it was awake again too. But like what I'm saying though is like I think that this is Erikson's way of just kind of showing like look at all of this horrible stuff that's happening right now, and then 300,000 years ago a bunch of really horrible stuff was happening too, and a bunch of things
Right.
between those times was happening. You know, it's like,
Hammering the like indifference of it
and
all
I
Lorne
thought,
thing.
dude, I think it's absolutely brilliant the way that he did that, because it was like it was a way of putting the scope and
Yeah.
perspective, the scope into perspective, just by saying how terrible this thing was and giving you a time frame for it. And it was just brilliant. I think it was just like masterful fantasy writing right there. Like that's top notch shit right there, man.
It
Like
takes
that.
the story and it exists off the page
Yep,
so well after that
easily,
point. 300,000 years off the
with a
page, you
few
know?
words, with a few choice words. Like that is some mastercraft world building right there, in my opinion. So I just want to shout it out because like in the first book we're getting that kind of stuff, and like I think it's important moving forward with Malazan to really keep in mind the amount of cultures, the amount of time, the amount of different races and
Powers at play.
yeah, exactly. It's just like mindsets, you know, and the amount of
Hmm.
time that's like gone by, the amount of evolutions and turnings of different wheels of time and eons. You know what I mean? Like really keep it in mind while we're reading all of this, you know, because keeping the scope in mind just just adds to how freaking epic everything is. You know?
100%.
So,
And it's hard not. You like are like forced to keep the scope in mind because of the things like the Jagut Tyrant are hiding under every rock as far as like the age and depth and amount that they exist outside of what we're told in this book. And to take your step a little farther, it reinforces the theme of there is good and bad within every army, within every group. No, there is no like good guys and bad guys, like right? Because the Jagut tyrant, who was he imprisoned by originally? His a squad of his own people who came along and was like, "Hey, what you're doing to these people are not cool." And then they put him in the barrow and trapped him for all time. So he was taken out by his own people, which there's a lot of one side having both the powers of good and evil. And like, look at the Malazan Empire. Perfect. We've got the Whiskey Jack's crew. They're good. We've got Lacine, probably not great, summoning demons and stuff like that. Um,
but
and then in it,
also though, you know what I mean? It's like let's read some more books. Let's see some more
right,
angles to
right.
all of this.
Oh, and we will. And so, with the Jagut Tyrant, I honestly think the main reason is because Stephen Erikson wants to have Krupp tell us this vital, I think, bit of information that I think I missed on my first read through. He's explaining something to the Jaggert Tyrant, and no, excuse me. It might be cruel. I don't remember who says this to the Jaggert Tyrant, but he says, "This is not a time for gods anymore. It used to be where the mortals worshipped the gods and the gods were in control. The mortals are now in
Ascending.
control and
Oh, I see what you're
and not
saying.
only
I see what
ascended
you're
but they're
saying.
actually in control because the gods need the mortals like in order to get their power from them like worship and stuff. And so he's like, no, the times have changed. We're now in a time where the mortals are in control, though they haven't figured it out yet. And I think that because like that changes the ascendants from being like power manipulators to like desperate graspers.
It's what
You
it
know,
feels
they're
like. No,
yeah, and that's
seriously,
what it
dude. This
feels like.
it
Yeah, and it
feels like
frames them perfectly.
well, and it's interesting because like they're not immortal. Like ascendants
No,
are just extremely powerful, but
right.
that's not enough though. Like
Yeah.
especially like when I don't, man, like the ascendants and everything, like that is a whole other. It's like you could just have all of this without any of the ascendants, but the fact that like there's this whole other game being played. Oh, that's
Well,
almost too much,
and the
man. Like I'd be
fact,
so stressed out if I was these people.
oh, think
Like,
about if you're like Whiskey Jack, right? Like you don't even have any powers, and you're surrounded by like things like Anomander Rake. Like it's like crazy that the bridge burners are still able to have an effect at all when things like Dragon, Solana, and Anomander Rake are walking around all the time. You know, it's like it's just a cool again, just people.
it reminds me almost of like proxy wars. You know what I mean?
Oh
Where it's like
yeah, yeah,
there are
that's a
like
huge theme.
so even in the world that we live in right now, there's proxy wars happening constantly, where yes, there are two sides or maybe even a few sides to a certain conflict, but there are shout for lack of a better word, larger, more powerful actors at play behind the scenes who also have like this kind of like they're still like they're vulnerable in their own way, so they're stretching themselves
Oh,
also like
they're
it's
terrified of their vulnerability because they know the power that they will bring and what the other side, their equals, will bring.
so with that perspective in mind, which and I would put this forward and say proxy wars are sad, more sad than regular wars almost, because it's like it feels almost like in Malazan with these ascendants having the designs that they do, it almost feels like this sort of ants on an anthill kind of, you know what I mean? Like it almost feels like this kind of fruitless like pursuit of empire and non-empire or
Right.
anti-empire. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Well, that's
I'm really excited to see how this all like kind of develops. You know?
and that brings us back to where we started with Krupp saying, or I don't know if it was Krupp, whoever told the Jagged Tyrant that now is the time for mortals, right? Because it's not only that everyone is a pawn being used. It's like you're not only pawns being used, but you're actually queens being used by desperate things that are saying they're more powerful than you, but really you have the power, you know. And we might even argue in our own world, like, you know, if those if the proxy countries were to rise up, perhaps they have more power than they are
Ooh,
aware, and
interesting.
shouldn't allow themselves to be pushed around by forces that are really afraid of their own might, right?
To kind of turn the conversation over a little bit, I really like that part that we just talked about, but something a little lighter fare while we're in between courses here.
I still want to talk Dragnapur
Oh,
sometime.
we're going to, don't worry.
Okay, cool.
I I really one of the parts of this book that I was just kind of like I rolled my eyes a little bit and I was like, okay, sure, why not? Was when Whiskey Jack just like calls Dujek with like a bone hand thing or whatever it was.
Okay, I
Man,
had to
like
reread that. I was like, what just happened?
so I don't know about
Calls him
that,
on the
you
bone
guys. Like
telly.
I thought it was a cool scene for sure. Um, I thought that was like some pretty weak sauce, honestly. Like I think that now, okay, so I am not Steven Erikson. I'm not going to pretend to know this man's mind, but I have a feeling he was sitting there typing out old Malazan Book of the Fallen, and he was like, I need to get a lot of information to Whiskey Jack, and I need to get a lot of information to Dujek, and they are not in the same place. So
Told him, he was like, well, the
fuck
Warrens,
it.
they kind of connect things, right? We can just punch a hole and have a
Exactly,
bone
and it's
Warren.
fine because like I'm not sitting here saying it shouldn't work
Ontos
or anything.
Phonak.
I just thought it was like the act of reading that scene. You know what I mean? It wasn't me saying like that's stupid. It shouldn't work like that or whatever. It's just like while I was reading it, I was just like, sure, he's got bones that he talks whatever.
I
Okay.
guess. Yeah. All
Like I mean,
right.
because the thing that kind of dampened it for me a little bit was I reminded myself that like Quick Ben had been able to like watch Hairlock through his own magic and stuff. So there is some like remote stuff. There's a certain precedent for it, but I just thought it was like kind of silly because it was like, oh yeah, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Like you know, it's like a
Right. We
self.
should have
It's
had
just,
one more of those conversations maybe earlier, like overheard that technology or
maybe
something, because
it
it did
was a
kind of
cell
like,
phone.
whoa.
It's
Yeah.
basically a
Yeah.
cell phone. Like it's
It
a
was
cell
the
phone.
same as the demon in the
Like
bottle. It was like, and I guess we got demons in bottles. Okay.
it's fine. It was like that was really the only part of well, not the only part. That was like the biggest part of the book where it really kind of like took me out, and I was just like, oh my god, this is so
All
stupid.
right, guys.
But you know what? Also, when you got magic, you're allowed to magic. So magic away, you know.
Dude, magic away.
And those people like Dujek and Whiskey Jack really that
Magic of the
conversation.
gaps.
It was like such an important conversation. Like it had to
Yeah, it really
happen.
was.
Like
Oh,
it
it's gonna
really had to
shape.
happen.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Can I ask you, without you spoiling anything, should I really be concerned about this Patty and Seer thing?
You know, that's just gonna have to remain to be seen.
Okay, cool. Because Whiskey Jack definitely there's like a part where Perrin was just like, I'm freaking out, man. Like this is fucking crazy, man. And Whiskey Jack was like, yeah, totally, but like wait till we get to that genocidal maniac, you know, like it's Like this is just a staging ground, man. Like we're just trying to get Dujek in here so we can deal with this problem. What I would really like to see, and we're not quite in the prediction area of this episode yet, but what I do want to say, what I would really like to see is Dujek and company, whatever company is still available, team up with Kaladin Brood. That would be really cool. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I want more Kaladin Brood. I want more Animander Rake, and that's a good segue into Dragnapur. We should talk about Dragnapur. We
Nice.
should talk about Animander Rake, if you can do that right now.
Totally, totally. Yeah, and I just can't speak too much more on the Pandian Seer.
That's
But
okay.
you will learn more about him, and man, there's some delicious world building in there if my memory serves me properly. Yeah, dude. I really want to see Kaladin Brood and Animander's interactions a little bit more because they seem pretty bro, but like I know that wasn't
Also
always the
not
case.
though. Yeah.
Yeah,
It seems like
totally.
a
Like
relationship out of necessity almost, and like
I mean,
shared.
Kaladin Brood was caught by Animander Rake using Crone to spy on him. And Animander Rake was like, "Don't do that," and he was like, "Whatever."
Let's talk about the sword. Let's talk about
Okay.
Dragnapur. What did you want to talk about?
Okay, so this I can't believe that we didn't talk about this on the last episode because like typically when we were reading just like the small chunks of the book, which I really like this format actually, kind of allows me to like take my time. And I
Yeah.
started like two chapters before the end just because I wanted them to connect real well in my brain and kind of have them be fluid. And I can't believe that we forgot to talk about like I guess what would be the epilogue of the last book,
Sure.
which was Assassins, I believe. There is a conversation between Baruch and Animander Rake where Baruch hears like the creaking of the wagon. And remember, Animander Rake's originally came to Darujistan out of revenge, right? He wanted to get the mages who fled from Pale. He wanted their heads. And there's a really interesting conversation that they just breeze right past that I'm mad that we didn't catch it, or at least there was too much in our brains that elsewise. But Animander Rake says, or he thanks Baruch for their heads, and he asks them if they came easily once it was explained to them. And Baruch says yes. Once they learned of the situation, they came without any trouble, which means these people gave up their heads willingly. So, what does that tell us about what was the alternative? Well, to be hunted down by Animander Rake, right? And so, what does that tell us about Animander Rake and like this weapon he's maybe using?
Yeah, I don't
Like,
know
it would be
enough yet.
better
Yeah.
to give up your head than to be killed by Animander Rake.
Because so my understanding, correct me if you
Yeah, I
can
want to hear
and
what you
don't.
think of Dragnapur.
It's gonna get a little dark, but like I think that
Sure.
I mean Dragnapur obviously has the ability to send the people that it kills, at least their consciousness or their soul, into a place of I wouldn't necessarily call it torment. It doesn't seem to really be torment. It seems to be kind of like everlasting, like almost like a Sisyphusian type thing. Like it seems to be
I don't
like
know what
a
that word means, but I feel like pulling a cart forever would be tormentful.
the guy like pushing the rock up the hill. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
oh,
Like
sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Dude,
and I
good
don't
from
even I don't
that
even
was
know if that's
good,
a
good
word.
reference right there.
I don't even know if that's a
Sounds
fucking
so smart.
anyway. I like Albert Camus a lot. But anyway, it doesn't seem like Animander Rake is sending people to a hell of sorts. Like I don't, and maybe he is, but it doesn't seem like it's that cut and dry, in my opinion. Like it seems like there's more to this realm of Dragnapur than just like sending people there to suffer indefinitely. Now, are they suffering? Maybe, for sure. That doesn't seem like a great place.
What is the reaction of like every character when they hear the creaking of the wheels
Sure,
and the
no, fear,
moans of
fear.
the
They
slaves? And
do
there's
not
like,
like it.
it's not a good
Believe me,
place.
I'm not
Is it
saying
the
it's a good
burning
place,
cauldron of hell? No, but like, yeah, yeah.
but it seems more complicated than just Animander Rig sending people to go suffer. If that is it, then I'm wrong, but it seems different. It seems like that sword was made for a different purpose, like a more nuanced purpose. So that's just like how I'm seeing it. But I think it's because I like Animander Rake, and
Totally.
I don't want him to be a guy that sends people to eternal torment. So maybe he does. I don't know. That'd be shitty
I
if he did,
mean,
but
maybe he's one of those people who like carries the weapon because he knows in anyone else's hands it would be a thing of even worse evil. Maybe I'm not saying that that's why. I just am guessing. But we also got to kind of complete that story of what we've learned about Dragnapur, Perrin goes into
Yeah,
Dragnapur and
yeah,
has like a
exactly.
whole interaction in there, right? Because he kills, or Anomander Rake kills two of the hounds, and then Cotillion is like, "Is there anything that we can do?" And Anomander Rake's like, "Nope." And then he leaves, and Perrin's like, "Wow, that was crazy." And then he goes over to the hound's body, and he gets some of its blood on his hands. He's like, "Oh no!" And then he gets sucked into this place where there's a creaking wagon that is bigger than any he's
It's
ever
like
seen,
over
filled with
20 feet tall. Yeah.
yeah, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of creatures, beings, maybe ascendants that were defeated by Anomander Rake, chained
Well,
up,
that were defeated by the
pulling this
sword.
wagon. The sword, yeah, that's what better said, yeah. And I mean, Anomander Rake, I think, has possessed
He's
it
like
for a long time, but who
20,000
knows
years
who
or
had it
so.
before,
I know. It's like,
Who,
yeah.
but who, yeah, you made a great point. And so he goes in there because he feels for the hounds. He now knows like these hounds are trapped in here. Anomander Rake said there's nothing we could do, and he's like, man, no, like he feels bad. He has kind of like a weird connection with the hounds, which we can talk about. Which I don't know if I have any insights, but he kind of has like he's kind of like broing with them a little bit for
I don't
sure.
understand that at all. Like, I mean, I
Like
think
he
I
stabs
understood.
one, and they're like,
We should
my
just talk. I
bro.
mean, like, I like talking about Annabelle Rake and Dragonfur and stuff, but I think talking about parents' experience in that realm would be good to kind of clear some
Totally, yeah,
stuff
yeah.
up, or
That's
at
what.
least attempt
Yeah,
to.
totally.
So,
Yeah, that's where I'm
uh,
going.
cool. So I want to clarify a couple things. All the chains, um, are leading into a sort of like abyss, like some sort of like void, right?
Totally.
Which is also fucking weird. And that's where the hounds go, though.
Yes, yeah.
But it's
Because he
interesting.
Perrins is successful. He frees those hounds.
But does he though?
Well, does he? Does he? He does. But does he
He frees them
put
from
them in a worse
where?
place?
Well, yeah, where
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
I would hang out there. I wouldn't even like, but maybe not. I don't know, because like it's
I mean,
like
these
if
are
the
these are
chains are coming
creatures
from
of
there,
freedom, and they're like chained now forever. They were pretty miserable about it
yeah. But why don't you free everybody? How come it has to be the hounds? Like,
because he was only responsible kind of for the
that's
hounds, even though he
silly.
wasn't responsible for them. But yeah, so he goes in there, frees them, and then he like does, and his sword starts like bucking in his hand. His sword is like obviously like very much tied to wherever he is and whatever he's trying to do, right?
Not, but it's not. It's like, sorry, I like stumbling over my words. It's like it's Opan's thing though. That the sword
The sword is Opan's chance.
chance, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense.
Well, no, chance isn't Opan's. The influence that Opan has on chance is Opan's. And then I think the sword becomes Opan's sword, even though Perrin has been released from Opan.
So do you think it was a
That's
mundane sword originally? I mean, it calls it a
yes.
mundane sword, but like
I think it was. I think
then how did it hurt the hound?
Perrin was influenced by Opan, or at least the sword was when Sari killed him in the beginning of the book.
Oh, so it was Sorry who gave it the
I guess
powers
in a
to his
roundabout.
sword? Maybe? I don't
Well,
know.
Sari didn't do it. I mean, Sari's responsible for it, technically, by killing Perrin, and then Perrin showing up at Hood's gate, and then Opan showing up and just like doing something with this. See, that was Opan. I tried, man. Like this is my third time reading this book. I really tried with Opan. All I can really deduce about Opan is that Opan seems to have some kind of, apart from just wanting to sow chaos and just be like the trickster, duo, which I can vibe with. Also,
Totally.
they seem to have some kind of weird antagonistic relationship with Shadow Throne and the Rope, Amanas and Cotillion. It seems to be like specifically towards them. I could be wrong about that. I could be totally wrong, but it seems like Opan has a stake in this game that's not necessarily just causing a bunch of chaos and messing with everybody. That's like my, because
He's picking sides.
well,
It seems like.
there's two of them though, so that's
He's
the
well,
thing. Is that,
they are picking sides. They clearly allied themselves against the Shadow Throne.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that they did ally themselves with the Malazans though, right?
Oh no, 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 not at all. They're still a force unto themselves.
I think my first reading of this, I thought that Opan had like bailed on Perrin because Perrin had started to kind of like move away from Malazan designs. You know what I mean? Um, but I don't think it's like that cut and dry either. I don't think that's like
I
it's just like the
think
timeline of events that are happening. Like, because it seems like they're all like Team Perrin, and then all of a sudden, like Crocus has this coin, and I was just like, what the hell is going on right now?
yeah.
Like,
I think by nature of because like the gods obviously, like again, I'm going to go back to the mortals are in control of the gods, and so I think by naming his sword Chance, he kind of drew the attention of Opan, like,
Interesting.
oh, because like, how do you
Maybe.
give a god control? Well, you worship it or you show it fealty or something, and by doing so,
Sure.
I think it was like, I see you, and then it kind
Whoa.
of got interested in him, and then Opan and the twins, they allied themselves against the House of Shadow, I believe, Cotillion and the Rope, and then the Hounds are of House Shadow, so I think that's why his sword did so much to the Hound, because the sword was like
Like
a
blessed by
I
Opan, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that,
I don't
yeah,
know, man. That's one of the things I had the most trouble with this book, and it's just like
yeah,
Opan and Perrin, because Perrin
real
also,
confusing, and they were afraid of him at the end. Because he had that Ototarl sword and they wanted the sword from him. And
man,
he was
it's
like, no,
so
I'll kill you. Because he realized he was the one in control at the end. He's like, I got the control. And he's like super confidently talking to them and they're kind of fearful of him. And he's like, no, I'm not giving you this sword. And he takes Lauren's Ototarl blade.
dude. Is Perrin like an ascendant or something, or like is I don't.
Is he on the path?
He's on the path, man. He's on that pure oil, the
Got a
path of light.
wild life, that's for sure. But think about it. He's the only one positioned to like properly realize that he's actually the mortal in control
Sure.
of the gods, you
I'm
know?
gonna keep my eye on this
Maybe
Perrin
sorry.
fellow.
Yeah.
Um, I have another question here, and it's why did Animander Rake release Sorry from Cotillion's influence? What was that about?
Cotillion released her on his own accord, right?
Well, it was because of Animander Rake, I'm pretty sure.
No, it's on the outside of Darujistan on the hill. Something happens and with Lorne and who what god is
No, yeah,
there?
yeah. Shadow Throne is Shadow Throne. Let me just clear this up for all our listeners. Shadow Throne and Cotillion are the same. The rope
Totally.
and Amanus are the same. So there's like Amanas, Cotillion. Those are
Is I thought
names.
Shadow Throne was like the throne that they both are and
No,
are
you're
in
thinking of the
allegiance
house
to.
of House Shadow.
Got it. You're right. I
Yeah.
am thinking of House of Shadow. Yeah.
What was the point of possessing Sari at all? Like, I don't.
To have an agent on the ground, have eyes, boots on the streets. He obviously knew the bridge burners were going to be at the central of like these very important events, and he wanted the ability to manipulate those events, and he needed a and someone who acted on his behalf. You know, she was his boots on the street, so he didn't have to like manifest as Cotillion and the Lord of Shadow or whatever whenever he wanted something done. I also think that the gods are bored, right? Like Animander Rake, he like very weirdly like gets rid of the dragons. He's like, I don't need your help. If I die, I die. But and there's a conversation between I think the Elder God Cruel and him, and the Elder God's like, are does it ever satisfy you? Like Cruel's thinking about, should I just go into nothingness, into the Chaos Warren or whatever, and go away, or should I try and come play these games of mortals again? And then he asks Animander Rake, does it ever satisfy you? And Animander Rake says no. And so I think Animander Rake has lived so long that he's just kind of like looking for a good fight. You know, that's why he like went for the demon, I think.
I think he seems to have also some. Like, he has a lot of loyalty to the Tisandi, of course.
Totally.
I mean, he mentions that they're kind of like depressed and they're kind of like this like listless people. But also there does seem to be kind of a thing with Animander Rick where he's just like, hey, like smoke them while you got them. Like, I'm here, so I'm gonna do the stuff that I feel is right while I'm here. You know what I mean? And he's.
And
I
certainly
want
the things
more
that are in
Animander
opposition
Rick.
to last scene.
Can you tell me without spoiling anything too much? Like, am I going to see a decent amount more of Animander Rake? Is that okay?
Definitely,
Cool.
yes.
I would really appreciate that because I think that he's easily one of the most interesting characters. I still don't know how I feel about him.
Totally. Yeah, he's a mysterious, and like why is he, I'm not sure of his motivation still. I don't know really. And I think that I think I'm right on a large sense with the gods that a lot of their motivation is like curing their boredom.
Are the Ascendants like really old people that have been like Animander Rake, or are some of them kind of like people that we've already like maybe heard about, like the Emperor, or like you know what I mean? Like, are there like, don't answer this if it's. I just realized
I
I might be
don't know
walking.
the answer, but I have
Okay,
a guess.
but like
That's not spoilery.
I'm just like, it's like now I'm just like wondering, was like the old woman in the beginning of the book that got hit, like, is she an ascendant now? Is she like one of a like, how quickly can people become ascendants is like my question, because it's like we
That's
hadn't
a great
seen
question.
Opan yet. like what if that old woman was like the woman Opan lady and she had a brother? That's what I'm saying.
Right,
Is
right.
like with the ascendants, it's like how long does it take to get there? And are
Well,
we seeing people that are kind of like cycling through that
right,
have
like on the
ascended?
path.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I don't
I think yes is the answer to your question. I mean, I think that the ascendancy happens, and I think for most it probably takes a long time, but for some maybe it's really, really fast or something like stumbling across the like the genie's lamp from Aladdin or something. But I think ascendancy happens when your power exceeds the limits of your mortal body, meaning you like now live forever unless you're defeated in battle and like ripped
sure.
to pieces, and perhaps you like your power exceeds your own mortal coil, like the Jagut tyrant, right? It sacrificed its own body and just possessed somebody else because it's such a creature of power beyond, like
Yeah.
Anomander Rake, and
But like if
Cotillion
he's that
definitely they own
strong,
warrens, like they have created or they've taken over their own warrens, so it's like they're so powerful, but I think they started as like a fairly mundane like god, a creature that's just really ripped.
I think the reason I'm trying to get to this point is like I wonder if as this series goes on, if people are dying, if they're really dying. You know what I mean? Like that's what I
Right.
really want to know because it's like I think one of parents dies or something. I can't remember. It's like his dad or his mom or something. Um, I think maybe when Opan told Perrin that he needed to, they were like going to take a different life than his or something. It was something like that. I think they killed. I think they took one of his parents. That's just my theory.
Oh,
And
okay.
I
Interesting.
think that bears out. Anyway,
Totally.
um,
Well, there's definitely
but like if
realms
one
that
of
people can exist beyond our own.
right, but it's like, what if there's an ascendant that's like, it's parents' dad. You know what I mean? Like that's like what and
Right.
I'm not saying anything like that's gonna happen, but it's like I want to know that so
I
but I guess it
think
doesn't matter if I know it or
I
not.
would
But I'm
think that
just
that's
curious.
very unlikely. I think it's creatures that have exhibited extreme amounts of power
Okay,
might get offered like ascendancy once they're dead, but I think that kind of like them dying is like almost anathema to them being ascendancy. Like ascendancy is like grown so much, you've accumulated so much power that
oh,
like
there's no. Okay, I see what
there's
you're
no
saying.
dying
Yeah.
unless someone like de-warrens you or something. You exist beyond your own mortal body. And so I think though I think to kind of get into your question a little, I think there is different ways and different places that certain souls are taken. Obviously, Anomander Rake's sword is one of them that we were just talking about. Those souls like go in there, and then all those people continue existing in there, though the dog's body was dead. And the crone, I think, is there's multiple references that like something there's this other presence inside of Sari that is like preventing her from experiencing all these memories or for like losing her absolute marbles because has buckets of blood on her hands and she's tortured a bunch of people, being possessed. And that creature was Crone. And so I think existing inside of Sari right now is like trace elements of Cotillion shadow magic, Apsalar, and Crone. And this is all due to Crone's predicting what would happen in her immediate future when she met her on the street, and then she does some sort of spell on her, which like protects her and then maybe sacrifices her own soul to help Sari or something, knowing that she was about to be overpowered. I don't know. I'm just talking to my ass right now. But it sounds good.
No, it sounded great.
And I still
Set
think
up so
she's
good.
inside of Apsalar.
I got a little bit confused just right at the end there because I was like, I thought you meant the Raven, like Crone, the Raven. You're
Oh,
thinking of
oh
like,
no, the crone, like the witch. The
yeah, the
witch.
witch.
Yeah, sorry, that
Uh,
was confusing choice of words.
yeah, no, the witch is definitely um like
In Apsalar.
protecting Apsalar,
Yeah.
I would
But it's
argue.
like she died right in front of us. So I'm wondering because like you were kind of
That's
asking
what
like
I'm
where does the
saying.
soul
That's what
go,
I'm
you
saying.
know?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
obviously not there's not one
so
answer to the
so now I
question.
don't trust death in the series at all.
You
I don't
shouldn't. Yeah, I
trust it.
don't think you should. And that's
Like
not even a spoiler. I'm just saying
Lauren could
from what
come
we've
back,
learned.
you know? Like if Lauren
Well, I
came
mean,
back,
what do
then
we know that's happening with Tattersail right now?
oh
Tattersail
my
and
god, I
like
didn't even mention that.
what was the bee name of the guy that she killed, Benurdin or something?
Bertolin or
Bertalan, yeah, and then there was like the a
Beller did.
Nightshade. Nightshade is the Belurden, Nightshade, and her are like are in some like child reincarnation concoction that's growing really fast, and occasionally we see little snippets from her eyes as like, "What's this? Oh ho ho, an army!" And she's growing fast. We hear like chuckles of gods being like, "Oh yes, she's coming along quite nicely."
Man, the Tattersail thing that was a little much for me.
And Perrin
Where-
even knows it,
I
right? He
know
says
they're
at
like
one point, like,
talking
I'm
to
gonna go
each other.
find you.
Well, they're like talking, well, not talking, but there's like, I mean, kind of, but like in the epilogue,
Yeah, they're magic
Perrin.
texting.
I love magic texting in books,
Magic
y'all.
texting, baby.
That's why if you like magic texting, go read ACOTAR. They
Go
magic
read
text
Akatar, dude. It's so cute.
all
Magic
day.
texting. So as we kind of like transition to the final part of this, because I know this is going to be a long episode here, but I think it was a good one, man. I
Yeah,
want to hear some of the like Evan predictions, the Evan premonitions. Like, what role do you think Aaron is going to play in this? Do you think he's going to die next book? Do you think he's going to be with us for a long time? Like, give me some predictions as to where the story. Like, have we seen the last of Absalar? Let's give me Perrin and Absalar specific. What do you think's
sure.
going to happen with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Apsalar is out. I don't think we're gonna see Apsalar anymore.
Okay,
I know that's a pretty bold prediction. I just can't
she's been through
see.
enough.
I can't see any real reason to keep her around. Um, and I think that she was cool. She was a cool character for sure. And I think that her effect on the bridge burners and stuff, it was all fine. Even though I still don't really understand why she was even. I don't even know why Sorry was even anyway. Um, Absolar I think is done for a while at
Boots
least.
on the street. Boots on the street, Evan.
But Perrin though, I think Perrin, at least to my mind, the bridge burners, apart from like maybe Quick Ben, are largely, at least right now, more secular, a little more insular from the whole God thing. I think that maybe Perrin will serve as a sort of interlocutor or kind of like a go between like his parent seems to have a certain kind of like touch with
Affinity.
ascendance, you know. He seems to have like the it factor. It seems like a
Yeah,
lot of focus is being paid to him in a lot of weird witchy ways that
totally. And the
and
gods
I
maybe like brush off onto you as you interact with them
maybe, and I think
sometimes, you
that like
know?
the bridge burners don't really have that right now, and they did with Quick Ben, but he's kind of like, you know, not it doesn't seem like many people are that magical or ascendant people are that stoked on Quick Ben. So I think Perrin's role going forward is going to be a sort of kind of like woo woo, like person in charge character, like somebody that's a little bit more tapped in than everybody else.
Cool.
But
Because he's obviously been through it and proved his strength.
right. But what I would see, that's what I think Perrin is going to
It's
happen
a
with
great
Perrin.
guess.
What I would like to see happen to Perrin is I would like to see him get have to go through some more scrapes and become a real bridge burner. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah,
Like I don't necessarily want to see Perrin dipping in and out of Warrens and having these weird cryptic conversations with Ascendants. I think that's probably what's gonna happen. Like but like I could be wrong about that obviously, but I would really like to see Perrin become a little bit more like feet in the mud, blood on
totally. Like
his
washed
sword
from
kind
his
of,
rich merchant upbringing.
especially considering, you know, this relationship that was kicked off at the very on the very first page of this entire series between him and Whiskey Jack. I would like to see
Totally.
some symmetry there with
Right. They're
Perrin.
like fates are obviously intertwined.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see some more of Perrin and Whiskey Jack and just everybody. I just want more bridge burners, but yeah, Perrin. Yeah, I think that.
Who do you
I,
think Quick Ben is? You mentioned his name, and we get a lot of hints. And this book ends with like some weird cryptic things where he's like, "Should I say
yeah,
no?
that
I'm
was
going to
weird.
not. I'm going to hold
Yeah.
off." What do you
So,
think is going on with him?
well, for to answer the second question you asked, I mean, like, or that you intimated. I think Quickman knows that Callum and Fiddler are like they volunteered awfully quickly to take Absalar back. Like in my mind, I was like, why are they like
Oh, but they're just
headed?
like gentlemen at their core, and they're like,
I
"Yeah,
don't
she's
know,
just a
man.
poor thing
I
out
don't
in the,
know. I could be so wrong about this, but like I think that there's more
she's
going
like the
on.
reason they fight for the young fisher girl, you know. So she doesn't have
I
to. I think
don't
she's like
know,
the
man.
embodiment of
I
their
think
ideals, you
Quickben
know.
knows more about what Callum and Fiddler are up to, and he hasn't told Whiskey Jack what's going on.
So
I
you
could
think they
be
have extracurriculars that they're trying to accomplish, getting away from the
Callum and
bridge burners?
Fiddler?
Yeah, huh.
Yeah, I think that there's something
Okay,
going on.
interesting, interesting,
Yeah,
cool.
because like that's just like the vibe I got from like Quick Ben being like, should I tell him? Because it was like right after they left, and like I don't know. But yeah,
No, I
with
love that.
Quick
That's
Ben in
great.
particular, um, his name is Delat, something
The lat.
something, Ben something Delat. Also, I think Quick Ben is a play
Seven
on
more.
Ben Quick, which is a Faulkner character. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But Yeah, Quickben, I don't know. He can control 7 Warrens, which is like bonkers, right? That's like way too many Warrens to control,
One of
right?
the high mages was like, "Is that even possible?" Like a
Sure.
high mage was saying
Um,
that, so that's obviously special.
so this is a wild opinion that I'm about to throw out. I'm just tossing it out. Could be wrong, could be right. I have no idea. I think Quickben maybe was an ascendant, but is no longer one.
Ooh, cool take.
Like I don't know if that I don't even know if that's possible in this world, but like when he said his name to
I love that.
Shadow Throne got really upset,
Super
right?
pissed.
And it's like he was already so high up in House Shadow, but like maybe he left because he ascended. You know what I mean? Or
Ooh.
something like that. And like in like that process, this is such a wild theory. People in their car listening to this that have read this series like 3 times are just like, damn, Evan, that's so fucking wrong. But like
Dude,
I
it's
just
not foundationless though. Like he's
well,
displaying signs of
he's
wild
so
power.
powerful. Like it's
Yeah.
like ridiculous how powerful he is.
It,
But
Tattersail calls
also,
him a true master.
but
She's like, "I
also
should know
though,
you."
but Quickben's not leveling cities. Quickben's not like influencing anybody. He's not like he's just a really powerful mage. So I think what happened was he had a sort of fall from grace. I think Quickben's a lot older than everybody thinks he is. So I'm really excited to see what happens with that.
I
Um,
think it's even mentioned that he's pretty old. Like maybe out in the open, like he's like, maybe not like to a tool old, but like a couple thousand years old, maybe. I
is
don't know that.
Whiskey Jack
I'm trying to remember something.
is Whiskey Jack just like a
He's just
guy? Like he's just
yeah,
like
yeah.
50. He's just
I'm pretty
45
sure.
or whatever. He like to me he's like a 45-year-old. Like when I'm thinking of Whiskey Jack, I'm thinking of like an older like Kurt Russell
Yeah, totally,
maybe.
totally.
You
Like
know what I
an
mean?
older Logan, Nine Fingers. Yeah, he's
Sure, maybe,
like
yeah.
maybe slowed down a little in his old years, you
Yeah,
know?
just slow down a little bit. Speaking of things that I'd like to see, it's just kind of like how I think that things are going to progress here. I don't think Dujek One Arm is long for this world.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be around for very much longer.
Just don't really like one-armed folk, huh?
No, I mean I really like Dujek. I think Dujek is cool. But I think that it's like the logical horrible thing to happen in the next few books.
Totally.
Um,
Ooh, which brings us nicely to the question that we began this episode with that I was like, not now, which is, are the bridge burners currently exiled? And is the whole army, is Dujak's whole army exiled? I
I
don't
don't.
know,
I
but it
think
seems like
I think
they are.
so. I think so, which is like maybe I misread or I mean I got to be honest with you, man. Like last like 35 pages of this book, I was just kind of like, all right, let's get to the end of this fucking thing. Like
Dude, it's
there's
pretty
probably
exciting
some
all the way up to
sentences
the end.
there was probably some sentences though that I probably glanced over just because I was just ready to be done with this because I
Yeah, me
like
too.
yesterday when I finished this, I think I read like 200 pages straight and I rarely, if you're listening and you know me, I rarely read more than like 100 pages a day. Like,
Oh, really?
nah, like, yeah, I mean,
I
like,
tend to like smash hard and long
oh,
and
really?
then
Yeah.
like do that less frequently.
I think like on average, a normal reading session for me is like 35 to 40 pages, but I'll do it like twice a
Okay.
day or like, you know what I mean? Like a really solid, really great reading session for me is like 80 to 100 pages. Like, in fact, I can sit for like an hour and a half, you know what I mean? But then I get a little antsy and I want to do something else. But with this, I pretty much sat for like 3 hours and just kind of like cranked it out. And yeah, by the end of it, I was just kind of like, "Ugh, okay, but anyway, just in a long roundabout way to get back to what you were talking about. Um, I'm pretty sure Lessine or like Dujek is just done. Like he's done too much. He's too
Hmm.
powerful by himself.
If you
He's
were
exiled.
Lysine, you'd be killing
Yeah,
her, killing
I would
him.
probably nip that in the bud as quickly as I could too.
Totally. And
But
he's old guard too, right? And like that's like her thing.
I don't know about Dujek, man. Like I feel like he's not as old guard as the bridge burners. Because and when I say that, I don't mean that he's pro Malazan. Obviously, he's going through with a lot of these plans. But I want to give just two things real quick. First of all, the reaction that he has to Whiskey Jack when they're on like that rooftop about to leave on the quarrel with the Moranth,
Uh-huh.
it was very snappish. Like it was very like it seemed like it had more weight behind it than just don't talk about this now. You know what I mean? It seemed to me that Dujek was still kind of mulling that plan over, you know? I could be totally
Totally.
wrong about that because they haven't.
I mean, they've never clearly stated like our plan is to coup the Empress. He always just shuts down that
Sure.
talk.
Also, Dujek isn't a bridge burner,
No, he's not.
so
He's High
there's that.
Fist.
You're right. And I don't think he ever was a bridge burner, was he?
I don't think so. No.
Was he? Let me look that up. Actually, I don't know. Somebody hit us up in the Discord and let us know if Dujek was ever a bridge burner because I don't remember reading that. If he was, then I'm wrong. But if he wasn't, I don't know. It just seems like he's
I'm
kind of.
pretty sure he wasn't.
I think he's going along with a lot of this kind of plan, not because he wants this power, but because he sees it as the logical kind of like impediment of this empire that he disagrees with. You know. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see about that. Yeah. It's funny. There's a character in Dead House Gates named Duiker, and for some reason I just get Duiker and Dujek mixed together in my mind.
Oh, yeah. They're very similar.
Man, I'm so excited to start get Dead House Gates, man. What a great
Dude,
book.
me
It's
too.
so
Me
good,
too.
y'all. Like people listening, if you get to the end of Dead House Gates and you're like, I don't like this series, then don't keep reading this series. Like,
Yeah, yeah, straight up, straight up. I can say to put a period. Sorry, I still got
no, no,
Dujek
all
running
good.
around in my head,
Yeah,
but to
no,
put a
no, no.
period on that, I can say that at one point he was subordinate to Whiskey Jack. Whether or not he was a member of the
Yes.
Bridge Burners, I don't know.
Which is interesting because I think he's older than Whiskey Jack. I think he's like in his 70s.
Yeah,
Like,
he is in my mind.
yeah, but it's like I think there's like a line where it's like he's in his 70s, but he looks like he's in his 50s or something like that. Something to
Totally,
that
like he's a
effect. I can't remember.
stout
Um,
one-armed man.
there's so
But
much more to go over with this series, but that's all the notes and questions that I have. But what else you got?
let me see if we hit everything. I know we did some
There's
work
so
on it.
much more we could put. Obviously, we could comb through the recap again and go through everything, but I'm getting a little. This is getting a little
Me
tired.
too.
This is a long
It's
episode.
almost 2 a.m.
Yeah, we have been going for a while here.
That wraps up. We pretty much covered. And if we didn't talk about it directly, we talked about it tertiarily enough that it's covered in my mind. I enough that I put my green checkbox by it, so I don't need to relook at that note anymore. Because my notes grow so vast that like sometimes they're like so much. If they're everything, they're nothing, you know. And if I can't like find what I want to talk about in a reasonable amount of time, then they're not helpful. So I always put a little green checkbox to this stuff to eliminate what we've already talked. So my search query is shortened.
I
So a
love that.
little pro podcasting tip for y'all.
Well, yeah, everybody, that's going to do it for us here for Gardens of the Moon. If there's anything that Chad and I didn't cover that you really want to know about, we do have two Discord channels in our Discord.
Or if we were
Uh,
really inaccurate about something,
yeah,
please let
or
us
if we were
know.
very inaccurate, let us know so that we can clear that up in the Discord and then clear it up on the podcast for sure. Because consistency is definitely our aim here, but it's going to be hard to hit that target every single time with these kinds of books because they're just so massive. There's so many things happening in these books. Just so everybody knows, in our Discord, in the Book Reviews Killed Discord, there is under the Book Reviews Killed podcast category, there are now two separate channels for the Malazan read through.
Yeah,
So
can you explain those real fast?
sure. There's one that says Malazan General, I believe is what it's called. And that is, or Malazan BRK. And that's
Should be
for,
Malazan High Fist, but whatever.
that's for this podcast. Like that's for the read through that Chad and I are doing for people that are just reading as Chad and I are reading. You know what I mean? Like, so there might not be as many people in that one, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of
Right,
people
but
listening to these
the point
episodes.
there is you wouldn't have to spoilerize or block out the
Right.
things that are where we are up in the story as far as the podcast.
What happened is that there were, Malazan is a really popular series and that's really awesome. But there are a lot of people on our Discord who are very excited to talk about Malazan, and that's so freaking cool. But
So
like
cool.
because there's over 10,000 pages and we've only covered 600, when people want to talk about Malazan, they basically it's just blocked out
They're
text for the
stymied, yeah.
entire. So what we did was we set up another channel that's it's for spoilers, but it's not exactly like what it's not for this read through. It's just another, and I used a violin or a fiddle for the emoji for that one, so which I thought was
Perfect.
fitting. But yeah, just so you know, everybody, in the Discord, you can talk about now that we've finished Gardens of the Moon, you can talk about all of Gardens of the Moon with no spoiler tags or anything because that's where we are now. We're going into Dead House Gates. We're doing book one of Dead House Gates next week. And so, if you are going to talk about book one of Dead House Gates while you're reading it, use spoiler tags so that people that are also reading that don't get stuff spoiled for them, and don't talk about Dead House Gates at all past book 1 in that channel. You can do that in the other channel. That was a long-winded little ramble,
And
but it's really important.
you put a you black out the text in Discord if you're like, how do I do a spoiler tag? You can do two things. One, you could type a /spoiler at the beginning of the message. But the best way to do it is to put a like a what is it? What do you call it? A bracket? It's not even a bracket. It's like the straight up line. You double line, and you kind of use those like quotes. So put the straight up and down line twice, the beginning and the end, just like you would quoting someone talking, and that will black it out in Discord. So someone has to actually click on that text to reveal it so it doesn't surprise anyone with spoilers. Really cool feature, Discord. Way to go.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the Discord because, like I said, these books are just so long and there's so many things happening in them that this is a really long episode that me and Chad just did, but
Totally. We'll merge the channels at the end, probably, right?
Yeah, sure. But like the Discord is awesome because like if there's stuff that we missed, we can talk about it in there, and then Chad and I don't have to make 7-hour long episodes. Because while we would love to do that, I would really love to do 7-hour episodes, but I also got to edit this thing. So
right. But if your heart feels empty and hollow when the episodes end, as mine certainly does every time, just know that the conversation is continuing in the Discord. So it might be able to fill a bit of that hollow emptiness that you feel as soon as the melodic sound of our voices leave you.
And we're basically doing one episode a week. Like
we're smashing.
We're smashing, dude.
We're smashing. Man.
Doing pretty good so far. Let's keep up this momentum.
And a testament to our listener group that we hyped it for sure. We're like, if you're ever going to read these books, read them with us now. And I love that people listened to us on that front because we have lot of people listening. Like those episodes are getting more in the first 2 days than a Monday Morning Minute, which is like our largest or most listened to content in the first 2 days than those are in the first week, which is crazy for a 10-book long series.
We'll probably get some drop off there as we keep
we're definitely going to get some churn for sure. But
I don't know if we're going to keep that.
Right now, the hype is real.
Yeah, the hype is real.
We'll have to have 2 Discord channels. That's awesome. Thanks, guys.
I'm going to go though. That was definitely a long episode, and I'm actually go ahead and crack into Dead House Gates.
Dude, let's go Dead House some gates, bro.
I'm so excited, everybody.
I'm too hyped right now. I can't sleep.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for sitting through 3 of these episodes with us. We have many, many more Malazan episodes to get through. Oh, what a journey we are on. But we're done with Gardens of the Moon, and Gardens of the Moon is not the best one by a lot. So, and it was really good. No. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Dude, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And if you thoroughly enjoyed this conversation or got anything out of it, leave us a review because we need some right now.
Please leave some reviews. Reading this series with my best buddy at a big old Discord, that's the best way to do this.
I
can't believe I tried to do this by myself.
Dude, it's
so silly.
Me neither. It was like eating a pizza without cheese and sauce, which is just bread.
Just bread, man.
It's like, basil in my mouth.
Bread. Anyway,
yeah, dude. Thanks for being the cheese and the sauce to our pizza, everybody.
I'm all finished up. I'm all talked out.
Me too, dude. I'm all talked out. Well, that's never really true, but I am willing to say goodbye for now.
Right, everybody, thank you so much again for listening to this episode. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.